Hi, welcome. Chapter 2, Diversity and Discrimination. In the first chapter, we discussed about diversity. We also talked about inequality. In this chapter, we try to understand diversity a bit deeply. There are many things that make us what we are: how we live, the languages we speak, what we eat, where, the games we play, and the things we celebrate. All of these are influenced both by the geography and the history of the place where we are born and where we live. Do you know how diverse India actually is? There are 8 major religions in the world. Every single one of them is practiced in India. We have more than 1,600 languages that are people's mother tongues, and there are more than 100 dance forms. Yet, this diversity is not always celebrated. This is because we feel safe and secure with people who look, talk, dress, and think like us. Sometimes, when we meet people who are very different from us, we may find them strange and unfamiliar. People also form certain attitudes and opinions about others who are not like them. What do people think generally about rural people? Take a look at these points. And people also think about urban people this way. Some of these statements see villagers as ignorant and see people in cities as money-minded and lazy. When our opinion about certain people are always negative, seeing them as lazy or stingy as some of these statements, then these become prejudices that we carry about them. What is prejudice? Prejudice means to judge other people negatively or see them as inferior. When we think that only one particular way is the best and the right way to do things, we often end up not respecting others who prefer to do things differently. For example, if you think your mother tongue is the best language and other languages are not important, you are judging these other languages negatively. As a result, you might not respect people who speak other languages. Do you know, we can be prejudiced about many things: people's religious beliefs, the color of their skin, the religion they come from, the accent they speak in, the clothes they wear, and many, many prejudices. Often, our prejudices about others are so strong that we don't want to form friendship with them. At times, we may even act in ways that hurt them. Creating stereotypes. All of us are familiar with gender differences. What does it mean to be a boy or a girl? Many of you would say we are born as boys and girls. It is a given. What is there to think about? Let's see if this is the case. Look at these statements. Who do they generally associate with? A boy or girl? Let's check. The first statement, they are well behaved. It of course fits for girl. They are soft spoken and gentle. Girls. They're physically strong. Boys are very strong. They are naughty. Boys. They are good at dance and painting. Of course, girls. They don't cry. No, no, boys don't cry. They are rowdy. Rowdy boys. They are good at sports. Boys, boys. They are good at cooking. Very girly. They are emotional. Girls are definitely emotional. Why are we so sure about what fits whom? Are the qualities we put in for boys something that boys are born with or girls are born with? Okay, let's understand it better. If we take the statement, they don't cry, you'll see that this is generally associated with boys and men. As babies or children, when boys fall and hurt themselves, their parents and other family members often console them by saying, "Hey, no, no, don't cry. You are a boy. Boys are brave and they don't cry." As children grow up, they start believing that boys do not cry, so that even if a boy feels like crying, he stops himself from doing so. Why? Because he is a boy and he also begins to believe that Crying is a sign of weakness. So, even though both boys and girls sometimes want to cry, especially if they are angry or in pain, as they grow older, boys learn or teach themselves not to cry. If a grown boy cries, then he feels that others will either tease him or laugh at him, and so he stops himself from doing so in front of others. Boys out there, do you agree? This is the way boys are, and this is how girls are. These are statements we hear constantly and accept without even thinking, and we start believing that each one of us must behave accordingly. We fit all boys and all girls into an image that society creates around us. Take the statements they are soft and gentle or they are well behaved, which are applied to girls. Do girls possess these qualities at birth, or do they learn such behavior from others? What do you think about girls who are not soft and gentle and those who are naughty? Just as this, when we fix people into one image, we create a stereotype. In other words, stereotype is a fixed, overgeneralized belief about a particular group or class of people. When people say that those who belong to a particular country, religion, sex, race, or economic background are stingy, lazy, criminal, or dumb, they are using stereotypes. There are stingy and generous people everywhere, in every country, in every religion, in every group, whether rich or poor, male or female. And just because some people are like that, it's not fair to think that everyone will be the same. Okay, let's understand it with an example. A common stereotype about some Muslims is that they are not interested in educating girls and therefore do not send girls to school. However, studies have now shown that poverty among Muslims is an important reason why Muslim girls do not attend school or drop out from school after a few years. But wherever effort has been made to reach education to the poor, there the Muslim community has shown an interest in sending their girls to school. For example, in the state of Kerala, the distance between the school and the home is not much. There is a good government bus service that helps teachers reach schools in rural areas, and over 60% of the teachers are women. These factors have helped children from poorer families, including Muslim girls, attend school in much larger numbers. In other states, where such efforts have not been made, children from poorer families, whether Muslim, tribal or so-called lower caste, find it difficult to attend school. Therefore, see, not the religion, but poverty is the cause for non-attendance of Muslim girls in school. Stereotypes stop us from looking at each person as a unique individual with his or her own special qualities and skills that are different from others. Look at this illustration. The children you see here were seen as disabled. This term has been changed and now the term used is children with special needs. So you no more call them disabled, but they are children with special needs. Are you aware what the common stereotypes about them are? What do people talk about them? What are their own feelings? Look at this boy. People talk all sorts of things about him. But what is he thinking? Sometimes I feel so sad and sore. If you were I, what would you do? You look so different. That's what people think about him. What does he feel? I'm a person. I feel shy. I want to hide from staring eyes. Is his mind okay? That's what people ask about him. He thinks, just because my legs are wobbly, they think my mind is wobbly too. See, what we think about children with special needs are just stereotype. They are very much normal and alive, so they wish they were treated equal. Make sure you don't stare at any of these special people with sympathy. They are people with different set of skills and qualities. What is your opinion? Do you think children with special needs should be a part of regular schools or should they study in a separate school? Inequality and discrimination. In the first chapter, we learned about discrimination. Discrimination happens when people act on their prejudices or stereotypes. If you do something to put other people down, if you stop them from taking part in certain activities and taking up jobs, or stop them from living in certain neighborhoods, prevent them from taking water from the same well or hand pump, or not allow them to drink tea in the same cups or glasses as others, you are discriminating against them. Discrimination can take place because of several reasons. Do you remember Samir 1 and Samir 2 we met in the first chapter? Samir Ek and Samir Do, they were different from each other in many ways. For example, they belonged to different religions. This is an aspect of diversity. However, this diversity can also be a source of discrimination. Groups of people who may speak a different language, follow a particular religion, live in specific regions, all may be discriminated against as their customs or practices may be seen as inferior. Another difference between the two Samirs was in their economic backgrounds. Samir though was poor. This difference, as you have read earlier, is not a form of diversity but of inequality. People who are poor do not have the resources or the money to meet their basic needs of food, clothing, and shelter. They experience discrimination in places like offices, in hospitals, schools, where they are treated badly because they are poor. Some people may experience both kinds of discrimination. They are poor and they belong to groups whose culture is not valued. Tribals, some religious groups, and even particular regions are discriminated against for one or more of these reasons. Now let's try to understand how a famous Indian was discriminated against. This will help us understand the ways in which caste was used to discriminate against large number of people. On being discriminated against. We know people are engaged in different kinds of work like teaching, carpentry, pottery, weaving, fishing, farming, etc. to earn a livelihood. However, certain kinds of work are valued more than others. Activities like cleaning, washing, cutting hair, picking garbage are seen as tasks that are of less value, and people who do this work are seen as dirty or impure. This belief is an important aspect of the caste system. In the caste system, communities or groups of people were placed in a sort of ladder where each caste was either above or below the other. Those who placed themselves at the top of this ladder called themselves upper caste and saw themselves as superior. The groups who were placed at the bottom of the ladder were seen as unworthy and called untouchables. Caste rules were set which did not allow the so-called untouchables to take on work other than what they were meant to do. For example, some groups were forced to pick garbage and remove dead animals from the village, but they were not allowed to enter the homes of the upper caste or take water from the village well or even enter temples. Their children could not sit next to children of other caste in school. Thus, upper caste acted in ways which did not give the so-called untouchables the same rights as they enjoyed. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar, one of the greatest leaders of India, shares his first experience of caste-based discrimination, which took place in 1901 when he was just 9 years old. He had gone with his brothers and cousins to meet his father in Koregaon, which is now in Maharashtra. Long did we wait, but no one turned up. An hour elapsed and the station master came to enquire. He asked us why we are lingering. We told him that we were bound for Koregaon and that we were waiting for father or his servant to come. but that neither had turned up and we did not know how to reach Corrigan. We were well-dressed children. From our dress or talk, no one could make out that we were children of the untouchables. Indeed, the station master was quite sure we were Brahmin children and was extremely touched at the plight in which he found us. As is usual among the Hindus, the station master asked us who we were. Without a moment's thought, I blurted out that we were Mahars. Mahar is one of the communities which were treated as untouchables in the Bombay Presidency. He was stunned. His face underwent a sudden change. We could see that he was overpowered by a strange feeling of repulsion. As soon as he heard my reply, he went away to his room and we stood where we were. 15 to 20 minutes elapsed. The sun was almost setting. Our father had not turned up, nor had he sent his servant, and now the station master had also left us. We were quite bewildered, and the joy and happiness which we felt at the beginning of the journey gave way to a feeling of extreme sadness. After half an hour, the station master returned and asked us what we proposed to do. We said that if we could get a bullock cart on hire, we could go to Corrigan, and if it was not very far, we would like to start straight away. There were many bullock carts plying for hire, but my reply to the station master that we were Mahars had gone round among the cartmen, and not one of them had prepared to suffer being polluted and to demean himself carrying passengers of the untouchable classes. We were prepared to pay double the fare, but we found that money did not work. The station master, who was negotiating on our behalf, stood silent, not knowing what to do. See, Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar has shared his first experience of caste-based discrimination, which he encountered at the age of 9. Just imagine how difficult it would be if people could not move easily from one place to the other. How insulting and hurtful it is to have people move away or refuse to touch you or allow you to drink water from the same source as they do. So clearly, as this story shows us, caste-based discrimination is not only limited to preventing Dalits from undertaking certain economic activities, but it also denies them the respect and dignity given to others. What does Dalit mean? Dalit is a term that people belonging to so-called lower caste use to address themselves. They prefer this word to untouchables. Dalit means those who have been broken. This word, according to Dalits, shows how social prejudices and discrimination have broken the Dalit people. The government refers to this group of people as scheduled caste or SC. Dr. Bhimrao Ambedkar is considered the father of the Indian Constitution and is also the best known leader of the Dalits. Dr. Ambedkar fought for the rights of the Dalit community. He was born into the Mahar caste, which was considered untouchable. The Mahars were poor, owned no land, and children born to them also had to do the work the parents did. They lived in spaces outside the main village and were not allowed into the village. Dr. Ambedkar was the first person from this caste who completed his college education and went to England to become a lawyer. He encouraged Dalits to send their children to school and college. He also urged Dalits to take on different kinds of government jobs in order to move out of the caste system. He led many efforts of Dalits to gain entry into temples. Later in life, he converted to Buddhism in his search for a religion that treated all members equally. Striving for equality. The struggle for freedom from British rule also included within it the struggle of large groups of people who not only fought against the British but also fought to be treated more equally. Dalits, women, tribals and peasants fought against the inequalities they experienced in their lives. As pointed out earlier, many Dalits organized themselves to gain entry into temples. Women demanded that they should have as much a right to education as men did. Peasants and tribals fought to release themselves from the grasp of the moneylenders under the high interest they were charged. Have you ever heard about Constitution? The Constitution of India is a document that lay out the rules by which the nation would function. Here are some of the members who wrote the Constitution of India. It was written by a group of eminent persons of that time. So many leaders such as Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Dr. Rajendra Prasad and Jawaharlal Nehru had worked behind the formation of Constitution of India. When India became a nation in 1947, our leaders too were concerned about the different kinds of inequalities that existed. Those who wrote the Constitution were aware of the discrimination in our society and how people had struggled against this. So, these leaders set out a vision and goals in the Constitution to ensure that all the people of India were considered equal. This equality of all persons is seen as a key value that unites us all as Indians. Everyone has equal rights and opportunities. Untouchability is seen as a crime and has been legally abolished by law. People are free to choose the kind of work they wish to do. Government jobs are open to all people. In addition, the Constitution also placed responsibility on the government to take specific steps to realize this right to equality for poor and other such marginal communities. See, here is the first page of the Constitution that clearly states that all Indians are entitled to equality of status and opportunity. The writers of the Constitution also said that respect for diversity was a significant element in ensuring equality. They felt that people must have the freedom to follow their religion, speak their language, celebrate their festivals, and express themselves freely. They said that no one language, religion, or festival should become compulsory for all to follow. They said that the government must treat all religions equally. Therefore, India became a secular country where people of different religions and faiths have the freedom to practice and follow their religion without any fear of discrimination. This is seen as an important element of our unity, that we all live together and respect one another. So remember, the freedom we enjoy in Indian society today is only due to the freedom and equality attributed in the Constitution. Though these ideals are enshrined in our Constitution, in this chapter we came to know that inequalities exist even today. Equality is a value that we have to work on and not something which will happen automatically. Today, each of you understand how cruel it is to discriminate people. Each of us are born into a family, a religion, a place and a gender without choice. So let's try to correct ourselves when we talk stereotype, when we look at someone as low or highborn, when we consider someone unequal. It is young ones like you who must raise voice to eliminate inequality and have respect and value for everyone. Thanks for watching and learning. Thank you.